Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell. You'll get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And when I'm not asking Bruce, hey, how big was Batista's? Well, you know. One of the things I like to do is help people save money. And if you're watching this video right now and you're in a 30-year loan, man, you're overpaying your single biggest bill and you may not even realize it. I want you to do a little experiment for me. Take your calculator out, multiply your monthly house payment by 360 payments. That's how many payments there are in a 30-year loan. That big scary number, that's your total of payments. You're looking at that number? You know you can do better. Keep more of your own money right now and go to savewithconrad.com. Or maybe you've got credit card debt. Man, it's not a matter of if I can save you money with that. Your average interest rate on a credit card is more than 20%. And by the way, all the interest you pay on those credit cards, it's not tax deductible. Whereas the mortgage interest, well, that is tax deductible. So if you owe this debt, it's up to you how to pay it back. Doesn't it make sense to get the cheapest rate possible and the greatest tax deduction possible? Find out how much money you can save right now for free at savewithconrad.com. You don't need perfect credit. Even scores in the 500s can be approved, and it's no cost out of pocket. But maybe best of all, we're licensed in more than 40 states. We can help more families than ever before. But how much can we save you? Find out right now for free with a quick quote from savewithconrad.com.
You are sitting ringside with David Penzer on Radio Influence.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of City Ringside. My name is David Penzer. I'm so happy, as always, that you are here to listen to this thing we call a podcast. If you've been with us from the very beginning, and if you listened to that first show that I did with Justin Roberts, you know that one of the reasons I wanted to do a podcast was to feature people that don't normally get featured, because that was me. I wasn't a big name. I was the ring announcer during the Monday Night Wars, but little by little, as what sold became new again, thanks to WWE Network, $9.99 a month. Thanks to them and nostalgia, people started calling me saying, "Hey, we want you on our podcast. Tell some stories." And they liked the stories that I told, and it gave me a chance, to tell my deal, and it gave the fans a chance to listen to a different perspective. So I always said, even going back then, for every Lex Luger that's on, or Dory Funk Jr., I want to have a Ricky Santana. For every Bill Alfonso, I want to have a Nick Patrick, who is our second guest. For every Ricky Morton, cheap plug, because he's going to be our guest next week, so be sure to tune in for that. But for every Ricky Morton, I want to have a Rip Rogers. And in that vein, I wanted to reach out to a guy this week. His story is fun. We have a lot of interconnections in our world, friends and mentors. And he is a author of a book called Pin Me, Pay Me, Have Boots Will Travel. Bobby Blaze is going to be our guest this week. And I hope you enjoy his story and our conversation just as much as you did our conversation with Eric Bischoff last week, or any of our conversations, because sometimes to me it's the stories that aren't fully fleshed out, the stories that everybody doesn't know, all the answers to, or most of the answers to, that are the most fun. So I hope that like I said, if you've been with us from the beginning, or if you're just new to the show, I that's just something I want to keep doing, and I'm going to keep on going out and looking for people whose story you may not automatically know, who may not be in the class ever of the Hall of Fame, because I'm never going to be in the Hall of Fame. Closest I came to the Hall of Fame was when they used my induction for Sting a couple of years ago. So if you'll indulge me, I hope you'll enjoy it. Like I said, next week we're going to have, speaking of Hall of Fame, we're going to have WWE Hall of Famer, one half of the Rock and Roll Express, Ricky Morton, and that should be fun. Want to remind you to follow me on social media at David Penzer, at Penzer Ringside. Still having fun engaging with some of the Twitter followers, and having a lot of fun doing that. And if you do not use Twitter, you could reach me at David Penzer at radioinfluence.com. David Penzer, all one word, at radioinfluence.com. So thank you all, as always, for following. Be sure to subscribe. If you don't, leave a review if appropriate. And again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for making this little podcast part of your weekly listening. Justin Roberts dropped me a line. Speaking of Justin Roberts, dropped me a line a couple days ago, said that he enjoys when he's traveling on an airplane listening to Sitting Ringside. So that means a lot to me. And thanks, Justin, if you're listening, for the plug and the goodwill. Anytime I hear something like that, it makes me know that that we're doing this for all the right reasons. Hey, also still waiting for somebody to come up with a name for the our little Rip Rogers segment we're going to start doing once every 4 to 6 weeks starting in August. I got some memorabilia here from my personal collection that I'm waiting to give to whoever comes up with the best name of our question and answer segment with Hustler Rip Rogers, who was one of the most talked about podcasts that we've done in a long time here a few months ago. If you haven't heard it, be sure to go back and check it out. And if you come up with a name that for that segment, we'll send you some swag from the personal collection of David Penzer, WCW Monday Night Joe ring announcer. You can hit us up on Twitter for that if you have any ideas. So without further ado, let's get to what I think is going to be a really fun conversation. And without further ado, please welcome Bobby Blaze. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, we started this podcast over a year ago. I think our first guest was Justin Roberts, friend of the show, just sent me a nice text actually this week about enjoying the podcast. So thank you, Justin. Second guest was Nick Patrick. And if you go back and listen to the first episode, I said that as much as you want to have, Hall of Famers and wrestling super legends on this podcast, the most interesting stories are the ones that maybe everybody doesn't know. And I'm really excited this week to have on Bobby Blaze, the author of Pin Me, Pay Me, Have Boots, Will Travel. I love the title of the book. And, we had Rip Rogers on about a month ago, and not a lot of people know his story, but it was one of the most talked about and one of the most positive conversations we've had in a while. So I hope you guys enjoy. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to City Ringside, Bobby Blaze. Welcome, Bobby.
Oh, Dave, thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be here. I appreciate you having me on your podcast, and thanks for such a nice introduction. Sound like you have some really good people in here. Thank you.
Yeah, Rip. See, if I'd have said that to Rip Rogers, he'd have been hot. I called him I called him a journeyman wrestler. He thinks that journeyman was meant that it was he was related to somebody. So that was the only time he got a push. But we made nice and ended up having a lot of fun. And
Rip's a good dude. He's funnier than shit. So,
he's hilarious. We're actually going to do like a monthly or every 6-week segment called Politically Incorrect with Rip Rogers. So the fans seem to like him telling it but my producer didn't love the F-bomb dropping every 3. He could take every 5 words, but not every 3 words. That was just too much. But so welcome to the podcast. First, I want to ask you the obvious question before we get into your career is what made you want to write a book about your life?
Well, here's what happened, man. You think you go out, you wrestle. I mean, that's what I know you a long, long time. And, you go through all the training and you get out on the road and you learn to wrestle, you learn to work. And, you said it yourself. It's like maybe I wasn't the biggest star or anything, but I was kind of like a fly on the wall in some of the bigger locker rooms around the world. And I did get to travel the world. Thus the Have Boots Will Travel part of the book. And what happened was everywhere I went, it seemed like someone was saying, hey, Bobby, so-and-so, do you know Dave Penzer? Do you know Goldberg? Or do you wrestle? Or I saw you wrestle Roddy Piper. Or they would come up and approach me, whether it be at a party or a football game or, just somewhere local. You're going to hear my neighbor pulling up out here. Fuck. Anyway, so.
Is that is that Medusa's monster truck?
It sounds like it. This fucking guy, I'm telling you. But anyway, I live over here near fucking Bellsman and a fucking crack house and the church. I don't know. I don't go to any of them. So anyway, back to the story. The main thing was, I kept saying, man, people are interested in what I have to say. But someone approached me one night at a party. It was a football party. I was just sitting there watching a game, and someone started talking to me about the Dan Severn match. And I said, which one did you see? Well, they started telling me and picking apart both of them in detail. And I thought it was really interesting. So I came home that night and I wrote some ideas down on a napkin. I wrote some ideas down. I came home and started writing it. And then I just had a couple stories. I had like 6 stories. And it seemed like people kept asking me. And I'd say, you know what? They really want to know what the hell, They want to know about the professional wrestling. They want to know about me. They want to know about my career. They want to know about people I've met and this and that and that.
I get it. It's a wrestling podcast, but he's saving us money on our mortgage. Do you really trust this process? The reviews don't lie. 5-star review after 5-star review. We make it fast, we make it easy, and it's no cost or obligation. Give us a shot to earn your business. I'm telling you, you'll be glad you did, especially if you like keeping more of your own money. You don't need perfect credit or money out of your pocket, so what are you waiting for? Hurry to SaveWithConrad.com.
I just said, you know what? I've got some time, and there's no rush, and I'm just going to start writing a book. And I did. It took a little bit over. The first one took a little bit. I have 2 actually, but the first one took about 4 years. I stumbled on my feet about a year into it, just because I had some personal issues going on with family. But after that, man, the writing just kind of flowed. And, even Cornette 2 weeks ago on his podcast, he says something about, Bobby never was the best interview, and he'll tell you that himself. And I just saw him back in like May. But I can write it out, And so I'm getting a lot of positive feedback from the book. And that's just where I started at. People always want to know, just like your life story, not necessarily your life story, but your wrestling career story. They want to know, like, how the hell did you get up there and you're announcing these shows? How did you manage? How did you break into business, or whatever it may be? Do you know so-and-so? Of course, you know everyone in the daggone business, man. And that's interesting to people. And there's a lot of people that are, nowadays, I don't like the 2 words, quote, sports entertainment. I like professional wrestling, pro wrestling. And there's people that still like the old school pro wrestling, and they want to know about, the older guys. So that's where I have a little bit of perspective of just sometimes just being a fly on the wall, man, that, I was in a certain territory and heard this story and heard that story. And that's one thing I didn't do in my book, either one of them, and I won't do. I didn't talk trash about anyone. I didn't try to put anyone down. I didn't try to get myself over by, bad-mouthing anyone, anything like that. I kept it real positive. If I knew so-and-so screwing so-and-so, or someone's doing this or that, man, I kept that stuff out of it, because that's not me. It's not because I didn't want to heat with the boys. I don't want to heat with the boys. But, I'm still one of the boys, and I'm not, going to say, yeah, I saw this person doing that or that. So I kept it pretty much straightforward. And I threw a bunch of stories in there that drug, sex, rock and roll and stuff, but all of it came back to me, not anyone else. I didn't point fingers at, anyone. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's the drug, sex, rock and roll stuff that'll get you every time. It's exactly why I'm not writing a book ever in my life. It's interesting. That's sort of the exact same reason why we started this podcast, sort of on a whim. Is people say, hey, how's Kevin Sullivan? Is he really, so why not ask him, or tell me this story about, being on the road with, in a tour bus with Roddy Piper on his book tour. Well, I didn't get a chance to bless him to ask Roddy, but, I could talk to, talk to people that knew Roddy and tell his story. So that's sort of why we did it as well. So very similar. Hey, you dedicated the book to Larry Malenko. I tell people there's 3 people in the business: Larry Malenko, Bob Roop, and Jody Hamilton. Without any of those 3 people, I would not have gotten involved in the business in any real sense. He meant so much to so many people. Bob Cook, who's a student of his and one of the best punches in the business. Bob Cook can't talk about Larry Malenko without tearing up. He cared about everyone that he came into contact with, especially his students. And he sort of took me under his wing as a student, but teaching me about how to wrestle, but about the wrestling business when I was in the Global Wrestling Alliance down in South Florida. what did he mean to you, and why do you think he left such a mark on so many people, Bobby?
I think, and I recall that's where you and I met at when I first came down from Kentucky down to Tampa, was at his one of his training camps. And, I think what he meant to people was, first of all, to me, he's like a father figure. I know how much Bob Cook thinks of him, and I even put that in my book. Bob Cook, one of the best punches in the business, maybe second only to Bobby Eaton or something like that, always messing around. I think, Bob does a better Terry Funk than Terry Funk or something, anyway. It's fun times like that. But back to Boris Malenko or Larry, he was like a father figure to me, and I think Dave really – he took an interest in everyone. If he asked you how your day was, he didn't want you to just say, yeah, I'm okay, or, okay. He sincerely meant, how's your day? How are you today? Just the simplest of things. He made you feel important. He understood communication, like body language, and also the way he worded things. It caught your attention, as you know, and that you had respect for him when he spoke. It meant something. He didn't, like, in the ring, sometimes you see guys maybe wasting moves and not being effective. Well, the way Larry spoke and communicated, he didn't waste words, and I think he took people under it, like myself. I came down from Kentucky and he took me under his wing. And I know a lot of people that he went out of his way to be nice to them and was an influence in their life, as young boys. But he taught us not only about wrestling, I think he taught us about life and also how to become men. And I don't want to sound, it's like he taught us about life outside of professional wrestling, that, one mirrors the other, and it's how you conduct yourself in the ring and outside the ring or in around the business. And I don't know, it's like, he's just such a huge influence to me. People, I think he's just like a second father to so many guys, myself included. And like I said, the best way I can tell you is I had a lot of love for him. Always spoke to him, even when I was out working a territory somewhere up into, I was one of the first people, Dean called when he passed away, because I was that tight with him at one point. And even though I was back here at the time in Kentucky, he just left that huge mark in my heart, man, that he took me under his wing, and I think he did with a lot of people. And I think the way he sincerely said, Dave, how's your day? How are you today? Where you booked at? What are you doing nowadays? Stuff like that. He didn't mean it in a passing by way. He would sit there and say, oh, okay. And then he might even give you some perspective on that's a wise choice, or, let's think about this, One time I was going overseas, and he said, here's one of the first lessons you need to learn about going overseas. Always make sure you get a round-trip ticket. If you don't know a promoter or bring you here or there, and I mean, that's something so simple. Obviously, you want a round-trip ticket, but you don't think about that when you're a young boy, like, oh, man, I got a chance to go to this country or to wrestle. I was going to South Africa one time. He said, you don't know this guy. Make sure he's got a round-trip ticket, hotel, whatever. And so, yeah. Just he took the time to actually care when he asked how the hell you were.
Yeah, I don't remember much at 52, but I could still remember the Global Wrestling Alliance offices down in Davie, Florida. And they just invited me over as a favorite of my dad, the guy who ran it. Dr. Red Roberts was a psychologist in real life. My dad was a psychologist. I was a wrestling fan. I was a DJ. It was a favor. Hey, yeah, come down to the school. They had the offices, and then the school in the back in the warehouse. And, Red Roberts said hello. Bob Roop, God bless him, later took me under his wing, but kind of blew me off. And I walked by Larry Malenko's office and, Rook feeling like, what am I doing here? And he said, hey, what's your name? Come in. He didn't have, who the hell, I was just a little Mark, really. and I wasn't paying him to be, to train me to wrestle. And he said, sit down. He said, what are you here for? And I said, well, I love this business. I'll be a ring announcer. I could speak on a mic, a promoter, I'll put up signs, whatever. And he took, he said, all right, if you're going to be a ring announcer in this business, and chances are you're not going to be, but these are the little things that'll separate you if you ever get the opportunity. And if you're going to be a promoter and promote shows or help us promote shows, these are the little things that are going to separate you. And here's this guy who's a legend in the business who I used to watch on TV, and he's given me advice when nobody would even really acknowledge my presence. And I'll just, I can never forget that. And Bob Roop later on, and then Jody Hamilton and WCW were huge influences. But without Larry Malenko, none of it would have happened. So God bless him. Hey, who was in your class when you broke in? Was Sean Waltman, or was that after you?
Yeah, Sean was there. Actually, thanks for sharing that story. That's awesome, man, to know that. Gives me a good warm feeling in my heart when you said that about him. Yeah, Sean was there. Man Mountain Brody, I think he become, when he went, I can't think of his name. What is his name? Big guy, Haystack Calhoun Jr. And he him. That's really, Rico Federico was there when I was there. I'm trying to think. Probably Sean would be the most, notable one that came out of there. Dean, about 4 months into my training, Dean started coming back to the school, and Dean became a huge influence on me as well, obviously taking me and working with me, because I had the opportunity to be there 4 days a week at that point. So, they had different guys come by, though, that had, worked there before. The Saturdays up in Tampa was open. So you got a lot of guys that come through and just wanted to train maybe them from Japan or something like that. But yeah, initially Sean and myself would be, he was just now starting out when I had about probably 12 to 15 matches before I even came down there. I wouldn't call them matches because no one smartened me up, and I'm up here in the hills of Kentucky just beating our brains out because someone said this is what you do. And when I went down there to Tampa, I had been contacted, on the phone with them, and the closest I get was Orlando, because I knew a couple guys that lived there, and there wasn't a room over there at the camp at the time, and I didn't really know anyone in Tampa. But yeah, Sean and I became quick friends. I was just going down on the weekends, and then once a room opened up, I moved down. And he and I traveled around a little bit and stayed with each other and stayed at different places. Stayed at his grandparents, stayed at Phyllis's place, slept in a car, whatever. But yeah, probably Sean would be the number one guy out of that class.
You do what you got to do. Always one of my favorite wrestling names was Rico Federico. But it's funny, you talked earlier about Cornette saying that you weren't the greatest promo, but you could write. And you mentioned Dean Malenko, and I know you also brought up Brad Armstrong in the book. They were never great promos. God bless Brad, by the way. But they were, I know you mentioned this, they were two of the wittiest guys in the business. And I don't think that most wrestling fans, you could say it over and over again, but I don't think that most fans could appreciate it because it never came across like in their television promos. But tell me just about what you remember about those two guys, because I don't know that there's anybody wittier. Maybe Arn Anderson. I don't know.
You know what? I don't know any two, and those guys right there are just so witty. The thing is, they were obviously very, very talented. If they could have came through in our interviews the way they did in the back, with the wrestling skills they both had excellent skills. Yeah. Both of them had great bodies and tremendous fucking workers, man. They could outwork anyone. If they could have taken that back locker room energy they had and converted it to a damn promo or an interview, they'd have been fucking huge stars, But yeah, some of the things, Dean would just, something he'd come off as head with. I'm trying to think. There was Dean. Hell, you probably announcing down Universal maybe. It was Dean and Benoit against the Armstrongs and Rocky King, I think, was just breaking in a referee at that time or whatever. And Brad was trying to make the tag. There's like 10 guys in the back watching on the monitor or whatever. And they all come through cracking up. It's a hell of a good match, of course, with that kind of talent in the ring. But it's Scotty and Brad. And you could see him smile on camera like, what the hell is that, But Brad had jumped up on a rope and was yelling, tag, like, and Rocky turned around and said, get down. And Brad started like dancing on the side, just like busting a move, man, and it was just fucking hilarious, stuff like that. But I can't think of one particular, story or, Dean just had a way of just walking up to people and I don't know, it's just an aura about him. If you'd have to set it up, and when they caught on to something, they could just bury you in a heartbeat and laugh and grin and get over on you. And you're like, you little bastard, but it's a funny way, it's just, if they could have just converted that energy into their promos or interviews. And I love them both, and just so talented, man. I'd be screwing up if I tried to tell you a joke that Brad told me, or because he told me stuff in hotel rooms and this and that. And that I don't want to talk out of school, nothing like that. But some of the stuff, man, just crack you the hell up, man.
With Dean especially, it was more of a totally dry sense of humor, and it never stopped. I mean, it never turned it off.
You said something, and if you fed in, it's like feeding to a chain wrestling event, because you couldn't get out of it. He just you'd say something, boom. And I think Barry Horowitz one time said something like, if there's a battle of wits between me and Dean Malenko, I'm a fucking handicap or something like that, because it's true, man. You can't ever get over the guy. And like you said, it's that cold, and it's dry, and it's like dry ice, man. It's like, the ice man, it's just that he just had that sense there that you knew he's right on the edge, and he's going to click, click, click. And the more you feed him, the more he's going to eat you the fuck up.
Yeah, I know most people can't appreciate this, but some of the most fun times I've had in the business is getting, totally picked apart, by somebody who's a friend, like a Dean Malenko or an Arn Anderson, or, where they're insulting you, but they're insulting you to where it's so funny you're laughing harder than anybody else in the car.
Absolutely. If you can't laugh at yourself, man, if them guys eating at you like that and picking at you, that's the good thing. That's one thing probably missing in a business day is being in a car with a bunch of guys and so what? You're on the ass end of one of their jokes, and they just keep boom, 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 boom on you, and you gotta just take it and laugh and go with it, man, because they're just gonna keep on you, man. And I was in Australia with Dean, and he was just a hoot over there. We was over like 22, 23 days, something like that. And every day on a tour bus, he had everyone just friggin' rolling. it's just funny stuff like that,
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And, I'm a realtor now, and my broker and I have a broker and his assistant, and they're always trying to get me to, how human nature is, guys trying to get other guys to upset them, just to mess with them. And they always say to me, why don't you ever get upset by anything? And I'm like, my best friends in the wrestling business for 15 years in a car were calling me, Jew bastard. It was the nickname. And, God, you can't even say that anymore. But, so how could I get mad at something stupid? Right. The only thing that offends me these days is if you mess with my kids. I got 2 kids, and if you mess with them, that offends me. Other than that, there ain't much you could say. Go ahead. So it was interesting to me because you got your first little taste of success in the summer of 1991 and 1992 in Eastern Canada. And the reason why that is and people who listen to the podcast will know, my wife is from Nova Scotia, and we got married in St. John, New Brunswick. So almost 26 years to the day this is going to air. God,
congratulations.
Thank you. There's a special place.
I'd like to date a woman like 26 fucking minutes. I'd be happy.
There's a special place in heaven for my wife. I'll tell you that much. But so anyway, her grandfather, when I first met him, was huge. He was the guy in the front row that sat there with a cane and wanted to go after the guys, go after the heels. Yeah. And so, and she was, I don't know if he was still wrestling in that territory in the early 90s, but she was related by marriage to Bad Boy Bobby Bass, I think was his name.
Yeah, he was there actually summer before he was there in like 89 and 90, I think. Because people was asking me about him. I'm like, no, I'm Bobby Blaze, But yeah, I knew the name. But he had been there the year before. Rip used to work up there also. He didn't break in up there, but he worked up there too.
Yeah, we talked.
The old Maritimes, man, is a great territory. 7 fucking days a week, sometimes twice on a Sunday. It was a great place to get experience. I was traveling with Rico, and they had Leo Burke was there, Bad Boy Eddie Watts, Goldie Rogers, Ron Starr, the original Cuban assassin Angel. I learned, he was 52 when I was there the second year. You talk about fucking learning, man. He just right there teaching every night in the ring. It was a great experience. Leo's brother, the Beast Cormier. The first year I traveled with Rico up there, and we got a car for a couple of the guys and just did it, man. First it was 2 guys in a single bedroom, then ended up being like 4 guys in a single bedroom, just booking hotels on a Friday and Saturday. You always got a hotel, and just living a life, man. basically making, I think when the first time I took my money over, supposed to be getting like, at first it was $500, then it went to $600 a week. And it was still like $473 or something. I'm like, what the fuck? This is monopoly money. But I was learning so much. And it was just a great experience to be up there. And the people up there were wonderful, man. If you got a wife from that area, good for you. Those people are so fucking, they hated the heels, but they understood, you did your job. But man, the people, they were just so awesome. And a lot of Canadians they're so laid back anyway. But that territory for 2 summers, I went up there, I think 16 weeks each time. And it was just an awesome fucking experience for me. Loved it up there.
They really are nice up there, almost to a fault. And
yeah.
But it's funny you mentioned Eddie Watts. The first, when I went up to meet her family, when we were first together, I went to a show at, I think, Moncton Hockey Arena, and Eddie Watts was there. Shorter guy, correct?
Yeah.
But really good worker. And I thought to myself, as somebody who had, sort of, watched a lot of the business and been a sort of, studied it, I thought to myself, this guy actually is, good worker, has charisma, and nothing ever really happened to him, and I totally forgot the name until you just said it. But yeah, he was a good hand. I wonder, any idea what ever happened to Eddie Watts?
No, he went to Japan in between the summer tours. He went to Mexico and Puerto Rico. He was originally from Winnipeg, and the last time I spoke with him was third person. Someone said, hey, Eddie Watts told me to tell you hello if I ran into you, and that's been years ago, man. And it was a guy that actually was from the Maritimes that I was just talking to on Facebook, of all places. And he was like, Eddie, he went back maybe 3 years ago, I think, was a guy from West Virginia actually went up there and did like 20 shows for someone in that area. They just ran. And Robert, the Acadian Giant, Big Robert, he fucking in movies and stuff,
Right.
that was his rookie year. And then I worked with him his rookie year and then the following year. And what a great guy he is. And I think that's who I was talking to. It might have even been on Twitter or something. And Eddie had come back over there. Dan Marsh was a referee. And Mary Bond was a newspaper lady. I keep in touch with those people. One of them said, hey, Eddie was up this way for a couple of those shows and said to tell you how if I talked to you. So as far as I know, he's back out in Winnipeg, man. But I have no proof of that. Just that's the way the world of wrestling is. You have so many acquaintances, and you have a few friends, of course, obviously, that you stay in touch with. But you meet so many people, Dave. You know that.
Sure.
Some of them are just acquaintances, man. Like, hey, how the hell are you? It's good to see you. That's like Dean. I love Dean to death. I could walk by Dean and shake his hand and say, hey, I love you, brother. How are you? And we can walk by each other, fuck you, Dean, fuck you, Bobby, and keep on. It's just one of those relationships because we had, like. To me, he was kind enough to share his father with me, you know what I'm saying? So it's, I talked to Jody, used to talk to Jody all the time. He sent me some stuff. He actually did a nice little write-up on my book, In Pin Me, Pay Me. He wrote a little thing real nice about being a part of my life and influence on it. And I sent him a copy, of course, because of that. He's always had a kind word for me. And he's another river, too, People don't realize that, what a quick wit that fucker has, but nonetheless, what a great family to me. So
yeah. Growing up in that house, like when they were about 12, had to be an interesting between Joe Malenko and Dean Malenko, because you're right, they both have the same sense of humor. So it either had to be highly entertaining or it would have had to have driven Larry nuts. But I don't know. But so yeah, interesting. Eddie Watts. I hadn't heard that name in a while.
Yeah.
So did some overseas tours. You mentioned South Africa. I read your book. You went to Australia. Tell me any places that stood out and any stories from your international travel that you.
Oh, Australia is beautiful.
By the way, it's my favorite place in the world. If I win the lottery, I'm moving to Sydney Harbor.
There you go, man. That's nice. Yeah. I loved it over there. It's really awesome. People were awesome. I did 5 tours of Japan with Michinoku Pro. The shortest one was 2 weeks. The longest one was 6 weeks. I loved going to Japan. That was great. South Africa, that was just kind of a fluke. Went over there for like 28 days, and it was just a clusterfuck. But anyway, you can read about that in the book. It happened. I got there, got paid, and got home safe, thank goodness. But loved Australia. The people there were awesome. A couple stories, I can't really tell, but I've always told the Sue Shooter story. Someone sent me a picture of her from down at, I think, at Mania or fucking WrestleCon or somewhere. Had a little incident in a hotel room, and that's kind of made its way around the rounds on some of these podcasts I do. But yeah, Canada, just dipped my toe into Mexico for a couple of days and out. I went in for a cup of coffee, really. It just didn't work out, but I was there and boom, back home. But, everything, just looking back, you get older and you take a different perspective than what you had then. Back then, you're just trying to survive and get by and get over and have a good time and do the best matches you can. But sometimes, you're just looking out a fucking bus window and you're going, man, I just want to be back home, or can't wait till I get back in the States or whatever. So, and now I'm older. My whole perspective is just, how fucking lucky and how blessed was I to get to do all these things, all because of professional wrestling. Because of the talent I had, it took me around the world on someone else's dime, and I got to meet these awesome fucking people from all over the world. Some that I still stay in contact with, including you. I mean, I would have never met you if it wasn't for that. Here, you're a fucking ring announcer for World Championship Wrestling. That's big time, man. That's big time, Dave. So yeah, it's awesome.
I wish there were more people like you.
Oh, you got to be fucking positive, man. I mentioned your name on a podcast and someone asked me, and I didn't know if I should bring it up or not, but I had a point of the story, and it's just someone asked me about you, and I put you over, of course, and that's what I was trying to do. But there was a couple of people on the phone. Do you want to hear the story?
Me?
Yes. Someone asked about you, and I was telling the story, and I put you over is what I was trying to do.
Will I get to my 26th anniversary?
Yes.
All right, tell the story then.
But no, I was on another podcast, and there was I was aware of. I was on the phone with, and I don't want you to take this out of what I'm telling.
Like I told you, there's nothing you can say that's going to offend me.
Exactly. So I wanted you to hear that one more time, because what happened was this. I was on the phone. It was a Christmas special for a podcast, and the host stepped away. I realized I was on the phone with like 4 Jewish guys. Okay, so one of them wanted to know about Dave Penzer, what kind of guy he was. Well, first of all, I think you're a fucking first-class guy. I always liked you. I always have, and that's cool. I'm not telling you to come on your fucking podcast. Somebody want it, you cut it off when you want, But the guy said, hey, man, I've got some time here. And it was one of the one-edited podcasts. He says, what about Dave Penzer? And I said, fucking Christ killer, are you kidding me? And they fucking went nuts. They went nuts, but I knew they was all Jewish, and it was Christmas time, so I was like, but I had a point, so they started going fucking nuts, and and I go, no, I go, listen, I go, fucking Malenko was Jewish. I'm not being anti-Semitic. Here's my point of my story, and so you can kind of verify this with me, and of course, how I meant that just because of the holidays, and I was aware of who I was on the phone with, and they asked about you specifically. Well, I had a point because I was going to put you over. I wasn't going to bury you. I didn't bury anyone in my book. Why the fuck would I bury you on a podcast? You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
And nor was I trying to bury you just now. The point was this. We were on a plane, I don't know where, and it was when we was in WCW. I think you was with either, I want to say JJ or Bobby Heenan. I can't remember which one. You were sitting up towards the front of the plane, and they come on to start off. It was overbooked, and they wanted people to step off the plane.
I know exactly. I was going to Daytona Beach.
What did you fucking say? What did you stand up and fucking say?
I was going to Daytona Beach for Bash at the Beach, and I was on an early Saturday flight, and they came on first time, and they said, we'll offer a $250 credit to anybody who will give up his seat. And I was like, I don't need a credit. I fly for free, WCW's dime. So then they came back on, and they said about 15 minutes later, and they said, we'll offer $250 cash money to the first person to ring their button. And I rang that button. I said, this Jew's taking the money. And I walked off the plane.
Thank you. That was the point of my fucking story. I was trying to tell them that. When I said that first, they started going nuts, like, what the fuck? And I'm like, no, I'm telling you, this is what happened. Of course, blah, blah, blah. Creative liberties were taken. And I said, Dave Penzer was one hell of a fucking guy. And I said, that was the story for the setup. And they went nuts, man. They wanted to ban me from the show and shit. I'm like, oh, man, this is too far. So, yeah, I used that line because I thought that was so cool when you was telling that story that you took it and got off the fight. That's awesome, man, And I of course, I ended up telling him, hey, because I put you over. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to pin me, pay me, motherfucker. Hey. That's all I'm saying. Is like, that was a good story. I had a setup for it. I wasn't trying to bury you. I knew where I was going, but I also knew that those guys being Jewish, they might take it the wrong way. They fucking jumped over till I got to the fucking punchline of, what kind of guy you were, So thank you for sharing that with me.
Yeah, that's a great story, man, and it's 100% true. I went to the Crown Room. I drank about 5 vodkas and Sprites, and I got on a flight 2 hours later with $250 in my pocket. How do you beat that? And hey, and I got him to put me in first class, which I wasn't flying at the time. Although later on, I had enough points that I could just get automatically upgraded. Those were the days. Man. But yeah. Hey, no hard feelings whatsoever. That's what I said, and I think it's we may live in a politically correct society, and so be it. But I don't regret it, and I'd say it again on a plane tomorrow. It'd just be probably be all over social media in 24 hours. But
oh yeah, of course it would, man. But that's just the way things were back then. You could say stuff like that, and you did it, and it was hilarious. And fuck, like you said, you're into fucking having a few drinks, and you're $250 richer, and you're gonna be 2 hours fucking later. Big deal.
Exactly.
But I loved it, man, because I just thought that's great, and I told that because I wanted to say something. What am I going to say? Oh, yeah, well, you've seen him doing ring announcing. He's great. And then be a dead fucking podcast for the guys, just having a fucking Christmas party podcast, I want to liven it up. So
sure.
I thought, when I mention your name, I want to fucking get you over, So, yeah, thank you, man. That's tremendous. It's just like this podcast. I love getting these. I've been doing podcasts for almost 3 years now, and I just started my own. We're growing. We started June the 2nd, and we do a top 10, and we do this, and I go on rants and raves it. We do a listener shout out and this and that, and then we do a rant, and then we do like a top 10 of whatever. And I love it, man. These podcasts are great, and I just want to, just when I can get on one and talk to someone, especially an old friend like you, and then reminisce, and then you knew the fucking punchline because you lived it. It was you. It's like, you can't get any better than that, man.
I remember exactly where I was going, Daytona Beach. A couple weeks ago, we talked about Ting Mobile, the best mobile you've never heard of. Ting does mobile phone service differently. You only pay for what you use. No startup fees, no contract, no plans. I wish this was around when my kids were teenagers. Would have saved me a fortune. It's also perfect if you spend most of your time around Wi-Fi. Why pay for data you don't use? The average Ting bill is just $23 per phone per month. Nationwide LTE coverage means you'll have great network coverage from coast to coast, and almost any phone will work with Ting, from that ancient Motorola Razr, remember those, to the latest Galaxy S9 or iPhone 10. Reliable customer service. You get to talk to an actual human being when calling in. I love that. Get $25 off your bill or $25 off a new phone in the Ting shop at ringside.ting.com. That's ringside, DOTTING.com. Ringside.ting.com. So let's get into Smoky Mountain. That's funny. Let's get into Smoky Mountain Wrestling. You indicate in the book that it took you a while to get Cornette to book you there. And so tell me a little bit about that and how long it took you to get in and what it was like wrestling in a territory. And other than maybe Memphis and Puerto Rico, one of the last territories in the business.
Absolutely. Well, I was down there in Tampa. I was actually living over on the Clearwater side at the time, and I ran into Tommy Rogers over to the gym, and we were speaking not at the weightlifting gym, not at the ring, and we started talking. I had known Tommy from the ring, of course, and long story short, now he said, "Bobby, aren't you from up there in Tennessee or Kentucky?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Cornette's opening the territory up there," and I said, "Is that right?" He said, "Yeah." He says, "You gonna be home tonight around 9?" I said, "I will." He said, "Call Jimmy," and gave me his number. So I called Cornette up, and Jimmy was like, "Hey, Bobby, I know who you are, blah, 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 but I'm on the other line, I'm conducting business. Let me call you back." And he never called back. So next day I ran into Tommy at the gym, and he goes, "Hey, did you call?" "Yeah, blah, blah, blah." And he says, "Be home tonight at 9. So I was home, and sure enough, man, Cornette called me at 9 o'clock. He said, hey, Bobby, blah, 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 my apologies, whatever. So we had contact, and he said, here's the deal, man. He said, I'm opening this territory. I'm not full-time yet. I know who you are, but send me some information, send me some promos, et cetera. So I sent him a package out, of course, that had, some 8x10s and some old VHS tape that I put together from down in Florida and just different little things I'd done. And so I came home in June of 92 for a couple weddings I was going to be participating in. And Smoky Mountain, so I stayed on and off with Cornette for just a little while there. We spoke. I found like once a month or so. Well, they were at the Smoky Mountain show about an hour from my house, and I was going to be in town. And so I drove up to the show, got there early, and sit down and talk with Jimmy. And he was like, I gave him another package, pretty much the same bullshit stuff. Right. At that time, I think I went to, I just got back from South Africa, rather, when I gave him that package. I said, here's a couple other things. He said, well, here's the deal. We're really starting to get things rolling here. He said, but why don't you watch the show and see if you think you can fit in here somewhere? And I was getting ready to actually go back to my second tour of Canada at the time, so that was good timing. And that's why I was heading from Florida up north anyway. So so again, we met, we talked, and it was all so I sat over. I knew Robert Gibson. I remember meeting Brian Lee that night, and I met Scott Armstrong that night. But anyway, so I was like, hey, you coming in? I'm like, I don't know yet. I'd like to, I'd love to, but I don't know if he's got a position for me. But whatever. So I went back to Canada, and then I went over to Australia. When I got back from Australia, Bobby Fulton called me, and Bobby was a huge influence on getting me in Smoky Mountain, because Bobby called me and asked me to be on a couple of shows. He was running shows up here in Ohio, right not too far from me.
He still does.
And, I just went to his retirement show back in Memorial Day weekend. Right. I went to the Fan Fest all day. I couldn't stay. Sadly enough, I didn't get to stay for the actual wrestling show. I was having some eye problems. I couldn't drive at night, but that's a whole side story. But anyway, so Bobby, I start working on a couple of shows from Bobby, and out of nowhere, and he told me what I asked him, what I was doing, blah, blah, blah. And he said, let me put a word in Jimmy for you. And right after the Bluegrass Brawl in 93, Robert Gibson hurt his ankle, and Jimmy Cornette called me up and he said, Bobby, we got 3 shows. Would you like a tryout? And I said, yes. And obviously I went to Beckley. I worked with Brian Lee, opening match. I was really good shape at the time. Just got back from Australia, tan, been working with Bobby Fulton. Went out and worked like 15 minutes. Brian Lee, Jimmy took me in the bathroom. Me and Jimmy got so many fucking bathroom stories. We do. He had me tell one at Fan Fest last year down in the Carolinas there. But anyway, this one here a little bit different. He said, this is Brian Lee. He said, you mind putting him over? I'm like, look at this guy, 6'6" and 280 pounds. Yeah, I'll put him over. Tell me he's former TV champion and your first champion here, whatever. I'll go out and do it. I'm here for a tryout. So it went real well. And after that, Robert Gibson got hurt like maybe 2 weeks later, and Jimmy called me and said, Bobby, we got 3 shows up in the Kentucky area you want to fill in on a card. And they moved someone else up in the roster, and I did opening match every night with Dr. Tom Pritchard with Cornette as manager. So how much better can it get when you're working with someone like fucking Tom Pritchard 3 or 4 nights in a row, and then Cornette's out there managing him in opening match because they needed a space on to fill in a show. So he's right there seeing my fucking work, And every night, power bomb, whatever it was, 1, 2, 3. On the 4th night, we were about an hour from my hometown. And Brian Hildebrand, Mark Curtis comes in the locker room and says, Bobby, what's your finish? And I looked at him like, what? And I loved Brian to death. I said, what the fuck are you talking about? My finish? I said, I'm going to take a power bomb from Tom, right? And he goes, no. Jimmy brought you someone in. You're going over in the first match. And I said, what? And he goes, yeah. He goes, we like you, man. He goes, just what do you want? I said, drop kick off the top rope. And he said, good enough. And I went out and actually I knew the guy. I'd worked a lot of indie shows with this guy from over Virginia before. So went out there and had a good little opening match. I had a lot of, it's Kentucky. How can I not have a lot of fucking relatives in the stands, right? They're all fucking cousins, inbred and fucking hillbilly, So, yeah, so I went over in that first match. And after that, Jimmy called me for TV and gave me a couple little things, and he put me with Bobby Eaton, Dirty White Boy, a couple of them. I'm like, how the fuck can you not have a good match when you're in the ring with Bobby Eaton? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So Jimmy started talking, said, hey, you got some different gear. Would you like to come in? And, man, I came in and never looked back. He was always good to me. I have nothing but love and respect for Jimmy. We still speak to this day. He gave me a push as a junior heavyweight champion. I'll be speaking on my podcast about the late, great Chris Candido coming up here real shortly, because I had my first big run in the U.S. with him. And then, of course, eventually I went from the junior heavyweight to getting the Smoky Mountain heavyweight title in a three-way with Buddy Landell, Dirty White Boy, and Jerry the King Lawler. And there you are, a main event in fucking, Knoxville Civic Coliseum and Johnson City, Freedom Hall, and all these towns. And the thing was, Jerry Lawler that week got beat earlier that week by Bill Dundee for the USWA title, and then later that week he puts me over for the Smoky Mountain heavyweight title. So how fucking professional is that? And also helping some young boy get a good push for the promotion he's working for in the territory. Great, we work probably no less than 12, but usually about 15, 16 dates a month, and some of the shots I could be right home in 2 hours, and some of the times I'd go and I'd drive my first town for like 4 hours. Work that show and, stay there for 3 or 4 days in a hotel and work all within a 3 or 4 hour distance, and then eventually come back home. I worked pretty much Thursdays through Sunday, and then Monday was always TV, the first Monday of the month. So you get 4 days right there and come home for a couple, and then you're right back out on the, on the road again for another Friday, Saturday, Sunday loop. Where it was great, man. I enjoyed it. The money, was you didn't make a whole lot of money. I made really decent money, but because Cornette took good care of me, and he paid the guys that done TV $75 just to fucking do TV spots, But I've done personal appearances. You got money for that, but those appearances, and the big thing up here was, man, gimmick sales. Right. So you got the Rock and Roll Express and Tracy Smothers. They smart me up to the gimmicks wars real quick, man. And we was in Johnson City, Tennessee one day, and Tracy's like, "Hey, Bobby, you got any pictures?" I had some old black and white pictures. "Come here." And he said, "Go up here. They'll buy them for $2 each. You go home and get some pictures." I was like, "What the fuck?" Because when I was in Canada, the office sold pictures and stuff, but you didn't get any of it, Right. And that was fair enough. I knew the deal. But in Smoky Mountain, man, it was like the old Memphis territory and stuff. You sold gimmicks, and brother, them gimmicks, when you could sell, wristbands, hats, T-shirts, bandanas, well, fucking like the rock and roll, they sold everything. They was the kings, and I was probably third in sales because they had Tracy. Tracy beat me. He was fucking popular babyface, but rock and roll killed it. Then Tracy, and then. And a lot of nights, man, I come out here like, damn, man, this is more money I've ever made in the wrestling business. But I'd always have that check, when Cornette would pay you on that Monday or that Tuesday, whatever payday was. Never once would I want to roll Smoky Mountain did I ever have to cut it in my check, because the gimmicks always pay for my hotel, my gas, food, whatever. So to me, I loved it. I would have never left that territory if it wouldn't have ever shut down, And Jimmy paid me every dime he ever owed me when it shut down. And we still have a great relationship to this day. And it's all based on respect for the business, love for the business. I don't know about you, Dave, but I think probably between Bobby and Cornette and myself, we might be the last three, and I think Jimmy's given up. Might still believe it's real to us, you know what I'm saying? But I spoke to Bobby just a couple months ago at that reunion, and Jimmy and stuff. But I think we all three know now, that shit's long sailed. But you can, as a fan, you can have that hope in your heart, man, that it's still pro wrestling to me, damn it, still real, but I don't even hardly watch it anymore, because of that. But I just love, if I watch wrestling, I watch older stuff, man, because you got to grow up in a Florida territory. How many? I always think, how fucking awesome is that? You got to see all those guys at Florida Championship Wrestling. I tell you, Kevin Sullivan was always so good to me. I saw him at that reunion show, and he come to my house on my birthday about 3 or 4 years ago. He was doing some shows for a promoter up in West Virginia, and the guy said, "Hey, I'm gonna have Kevin come down," and I had a ring set up. I used to do this on my birthday every year, set it up out back, blah blah blah. And this dude, he said, "I'm gonna have Kevin come down your birthday." You're fucking crazy. He goes, "No, I've got him coming in for 10 days. And he got booked up here, and he said, "We're off for that Tuesday and Wednesday." And I'll be damned, they didn't show up, man. And we sat out back and spoke for like 4 fucking hours, man. I was just like, how cool is that, man? To sit there with someone you really admire and respect like Kevin Sullivan. I'm like, man, this wrestling business, just sitting there talking to you right now, reminiscing about it. How cool is that? You can talk about, guys that you met and guys that you know and guys you hung out with and guys that you done other things with, maybe get a little party going or have a little fun or whatever. We won't even bury anyone on that.
I never did that. I never did that.
Yeah, I know. a nice young man. You know, I was single at the time, you know, so that's why I'm single now.
Hey, you know, it's funny, Kevin, to get off on a tangent of Kevin Sullivan, and he's been on the show, I think he did 2 full episodes, and he came on when we did a show about Andre the Giant when the movie came out. But Kevin's a friend of mine, but he's not only so knowledgeable in professional wrestling, but he seems to know a little bit about everything. He knows about the, you know, world history. He knows about he could tell you, you know, who played first base for the Red Sox in 1942.
Baseball and boxing. And man, but I tell you, Kevin, like, he has one of the greatest minds. Him and Cornette. How can you not be around guys like that and not fucking learn something about professional wrestling? But also, like you said, Kevin, he knows a little bit about everything. Everything. He's a smart guy, man.
Hey, you mentioned Rock and Roll Express and gimmick sales. I'm going to have next week we got Ricky Morton on the show. So tell me what you thought was the hokiest gimmick that they sold, and so I'm gonna ask him about it next week.
Oh, you know what? I don't even know. They sold so many different things. What comes to mind right away, we all had these little headbands and glitter paint. Girls would do these little wristbands for you and hats and this and that. But we were getting ready to do the Bluegrass Brawl one year, and I don't know where they got them at. They went to some fucking probably flea market or county fair somewhere, whatever. But they used to do, and then you tell Ricky I said hello. He's a good dude. I haven't talked to him for probably 2 months, maybe. Robert and I do a show together every October. I talked to him 2 or 3 times a year. Ricky called me about a fucking booking, something over here in Ohio. Anyway, nonetheless, back to the gimmick thing. They came into Pikeville, and they had these inflatable fucking guitars like you see at the county fair where you got to throw like a dime in a fucking cup or something, or throwing them rings on a damn pop bottle or something like that, you know. I don't know if one of their girlfriends or aunts or whoever, business associates, went out and found a bunch of these fucking inflatable things on sale somewhere. I don't know what happened. They showed up, and I don't even know what the fucking markup was. They had people over blowing them up, and they would sell these rock and roll fucking them red, green, neon green, pink guitars, man. They would sign them Rock and Roll Express, you know, Ricky Morton, Robert Gibson, whatever. That was pretty cool because I know they kicked ass on gimmicks that weekend because that was a good run for me. And I know if I'd done good, them fuckers, I'd get the flow over for them lines, you know. But I do remember that because they always sold bandanas and T-shirts and, you know, pictures out the ass, you know, all that stuff. But back then, Polaroid was popular. Now I see them, you know, we all do the camera phones and stuff. But, yeah, them guys were great guys to be around and learn from. Again, they didn't even room together that often. And I'd room with Robert quite a bit back in those days because he'd be coming up from Florida at that point. But yeah, those plastic fucking air blow up inflatable guitars. That was a pretty good deal.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea.
Oh, it was. Someone, I can't remember how they got them, but man, they come to that show and I know Ricky popped for them, and they started selling them, and I don't know how many shows they sold them for, but 2. But man, they went through a shitload of them. I know that.
My favorite gimmick is somebody told me, I think it was Bobby Eaton because it's his father-in-law, told me that Bill Dundee in Memphis sold pencils. Bill Dundee pencils. So you get to go to 4th grade or middle school and with a Bill Dundee pencil and do your math. So hey,
or stab someone in the fucking forehead with it.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, you mentioned Brian Hildebrand, and my very next line of questions that I have or topics was, and I'm going to read it verbatim. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about one of my favorite people, Brian Hildebrand. Any other stories? I put him up there with Bobby Eaton as one of the nicest guys in the history of this business.
Yeah, he was a great guy. He and I, believe it or not, my first night in on that tryout match, he come up to me, shook my hand, and we hit it off. He was such a fan of the business, you know, thus the name Mark. You know, he said he took Curtis from King Curtis, but Mark Curtis, you know, and nothing but love. He says to me after he introduced himself, he says, "So I heard you survived the Malenko training camp," and so he knew who Boris Malenko was, and that really popped me because I was like, oh, you know, and so. So I always used to do the Hindu squats. I was really big on those. You know, he always done those I always done the 10-1s and stuff like that Larry had showed me to stay in conditioning. And when I would start cranking out those every night, probably for 3 years, and I was there like two and a half of it. When I started doing those Hindus, whether I was doing 50 or 500, that fucking Brian or Mark Curtis, whatever, he would get there and do them right with me. We'd knock out 50 or 100 every day. And I remember being down in, here's a good story. We was down in Macon, Georgia. I was going to wrestle 1, 2, 3 Kid Time Sean, and he was getting that push in WWF at the time. And we were opening matches, a big mega show down in Macon, Georgia. And Brian and I used to get in the ring and stretch together. We'd do the Hindu squats together. We were in the ring one day stretching in Macon, Georgia, and he said, Bobby, I looked up and I saw this guy, and I was like, I think I know who it is, but I didn't say anything because it's too far away. And I was like, man, and he goes, Bobby, you know who that is? And I looked, and the guy was walking towards the ring, and I'm like, oh, shit. I jumped up, man. It was Dory Funk Jr.
Oh, wow.
And I never had met him before, yeah. And he had come down for that show. And so, man, I ran over and introduced myself to him and Marty, and it was just fucking great. But Mark was, Mark had already known him, of course, but he's like, you know who that is? And I kept looking like, what? And as he got, I was like, yeah. And I didn't wait for him, I just ran over there like. But, yeah, Brian, just so many good memories of him. What a great guy. Sweetheart of a guy, fucking, some people just try to be nice, and you sense that, they're not sincere or they're being overly nice for a hidden agenda. Yeah. Brian Hildebrand wasn't that way. No. He was just nice out of the kindness of his heart. He was another person that genuinely cared. And I spoke to, I was doing another podcast just a few weeks ago for the 4th of July special and another one. And we was talking about referees, and you had one of them on here, Nick Patrick. Tommy Young was a great referee, and I always thought Mark Curtis was. And I said, to me, and of course, Charles Robinson, I think the world Charles, he and I had our tryouts together in WCW. But I put Nick Patrick, and that was my 4 right there, but I put like Mark Curtis up. I'm like, you got to have Mark Curtis. And everyone was agreeing because they were Mark Curtis fans. But, and he did a lot of things like Tommy Young, as you know, he just, you emulate the best. And so did Charles early in his career, but you just, and then, of course, I think the world of Nick too. I know you do. But anyway, back to Brian. He's just one of them people, just such a sweetheart of a guy, man. And gone too young, gone too soon, sadly. But that's just the thing about our business is you have all those acquaintances. But Brian, he was a friend of mine, and he was a friend, a sincere friend. To everyone that he'd come in touch with, I think he touched our life in some way, in a very positive way.
Well, the testament to that was all the people that came out. I don't know if you were there when we did the did the show for him in Knoxville in WCW. I don't know if you remember that, but Mike Tenay and Bobby Heenan came out. They had never, wouldn't see Bobby Heenan at a house show if there was $1,000 payoff at that point in his life. Flair came out and presented him with a gold belt. Flair wasn't even scheduled to be there, and Jericho. I think it was Jericho and Eddie against Benoit and Malenko was the main event, and Brian slid in at the end and counted the 1, 2, 3. They did a ref bump, but yeah. I'll tell you another story that you'll get a kick of because the two people you know very well. After he went into remission for the first time, he had cancer, and then he went into remission, and he went back on the road with WCW, and me, him, and Dean Malenko, your old buddy, rented a convertible. It was we were driving through the desert going to Sturgis for the pay-per-view in Sturgis, and we rented a convertible. Dean was driving, I was in the front seat. He was in the back. He was just so happy that he was back in the business and that he was cancer free. And we had this little 70s bubblegum music tape, and we put it on, Kung Fu Fighting and Seasons in the Sun, and the three of us. I mean, Dean probably be embarrassed that I stooged him off, but we've still talked about it to this. A couple of years ago, I saw Dean at a fundraiser, at local fundraiser, and we talked about it. And we sat there the whole way through the desert with the top off, and we sang 70 songs on the top of our lungs like we were little teeny bopper girls, and. You know, it's just
how great is that, man? Seriously, how great the fuck is that? It's not embarrassing at all, man. You got that memory of you and Dean and Brian, man. That's what this business does, man. I'm getting chilled with you telling me that story. Yeah. You're fucking listening to 70 Seasons in the Sun, Kung Fu Fighting and what have you. And you're like, what the? That's the beauty of the business, man. But I can just picture you guys doing that, and Mark with the biggest fucking smile on his face of all of you going, man, how lucky am I?
He was just
cancer free and be out there, a few guys on the road doing something one of those, singing fucking 70 songs. That's awesome, man. See, you're fucking smarting me up, man. That's cool.
Hey, so you had a few-year run in WCW. Tell me how that came about, and any positive or negative memories. I know most people have negative memories of WCW, but any positive or negative, and how did that come about? Who hooked you up with that?
I went down to, right after Smoky Mountain shut down, I went down to Knoxville. I spoke to Kevin Sullivan, and Kevin and I spoke in the back, and I spoke to Arn first, and it was just brief. And I went around a corner and spoke to Terry Taylor. I hadn't met him before. I spoke with Terry, and then I ran into Kevin, and Kevin put his hand on my shoulder and said, Bobby, if you want a job, you got one. And I said, oh, thank you very much. He goes, call Paul at the office on Monday. So I called, but at the time they weren't doing contracts. And when I called and spoke to Paul, and I had met Paul when I was in Smoky Mountain, obviously I'd met Kevin there as well. The only one I didn't know was Terry at the time. But when I called Paul, he was like, well, I need you to go to Macon, Georgia, and it was like a $200 payoff or something. And I go, I was just talking to him. I said, man, $200 to go to Mass, man, that's a long trip. I said, I'm making $200 up here every night on Independence. And I was, I just come off the Smoky Mountain TV, and I was at least 3 or 4 times a week making a couple hundred bills, just not even counting gimmicks, so I was getting bookings. And he goes, well, we're not really doing contract. He goes, it's only about 4 hours from Atlanta, aren't you? And I said, no, I'm not in Knoxville anymore. I'm back up in Kentucky. I said, I'm like 8 hours from Atlanta. And I said, I know that's like 75 miles. He goes, well, I could probably bump it up to like 3 bills, but, we're not, and we talked, and I was like, it just wasn't right. So once again, I went to an arena, went to Dayton, Ohio, spoke to Kevin in the back, saw Terry, this and that. And Kevin goes, I thought you were starting. I go, and I told him what happened. He goes, that's understandable. It's we just gentlemen, like Arn, you say, just 2 gentlemen conducting business, just talking business. So I had a couple of tours of Japan under my belt, and I had came back from Japan, and I had a message on my machine, and I thought, that's a fucking rib, because it's supposed to be Terry Taylor calling me from, WCW. I'm like, yeah, whatever. So I ignored it, man, because you know how the boys are. They'll fuck with you, and
almost everybody has a story about they ignored a call because they thought it was a rib. So that just shows the way the business was. I mean, even Jimmy Hart, we haven't had him on the podcast yet, but Jimmy's a great friend of mine, and Jimmy ignored the first call from Vince McMahon. He thought it was Austin Idol playing a joke.
Yeah. So I didn't know who it was, but like, fuck, I ain't no Terry Taylor, But so a couple of weeks went by, and, back then you had the, I don't know, cell phones or nothing. And I pick up the phone, and he go like, yeah, this is, Terry Taylor. I'm like, yeah, this is Bobby. And listen to him, I'm like, oh, okay. So he goes, would you like to come to Charlotte for a tryout? And so I immediately, man, go to like, I'd love a tryout. And I think I had toured Japan 2 or 3 times at that point. And I go, I'd love a tryout. I appreciate it very much. He goes, and it's in Charlotte. He gave me a date. And I said, well, here's the deal. I said, Charlotte's like, 6-hour drive, man. I'm not coming down there for a couple $100. I'm just telling you right up. Because, again, I'm kind of thinking this is kind of a rib that I'm even getting a fucking tryout,
Right.
And so I'm sitting there, and I'm not trying to be a hard ass or a funny ass or nothing. I was just telling them, like, I can't go to Charlotte for a couple. And Terry goes, Bobby, let me stop you right there. He goes, listen, I'm calling you for a tryout match. We'll give you someone that you can work with, and we're going to pay you, and we're going to have you. I'm going to give you a number, and it's Debbie in Travel, and she'll make arrangements for a flight down and back. And I was like, oh, okay. Of course, my whole attitude changed then. I'm like, okay. So Terry, took the time to give me a call, and I went to Charlotte, and I tried out. They had 3 matches that night, and I was the second match on. I tried out with Louis Spagoli, and Terry come up to me and said, go out there. You got about 12 minutes, and here, you're not trying to impress anyone. Just have a good match or whatever. And so anyway, I walked away, warmed up, whatever. Terry come back and he said, hey, just so you guys know, forget what I said about trying to impress anyone. He goes, you just have to impress me. Go out there and have a good match. And you know how Terry was. So we went out there, I worked, and come back, and Jimmy Hart spoke to me, and he said, hey, Terry Taylor's looking for you. And I said, okay, because you know how it is at those arenas, David. You're in the back, there's fucking 60 guys there, plus all your TV crew. Because that was a nitro, actually. I remember Jody, called me over, and, he was there in the back, and, tell you the time and, how you did or whatever. All that, the vibe was there. So I meet with Terry, and we step out back, and he goes, I'm authorized to offer you a contract, and here's the numbers and here's the dates. Are you interested? I said, absolutely. I said, can you give me just a few minutes to think this over? And what I did, I went and I found Dean Malenko. I said, Dean, you got a minute? I'd already talked to Sean was there, actually. Sean and Terry, afterward I spoke later on, but before that I spoke to Dean. I said, Dean, here's what they're offering, this and that. He goes, what would Dad tell you, Bobby? He said, what are you making right now? I knew what I was making. I was making about a half of what they was offering. And I was like, I got these tours in Japan. I've got these little dates up here, blah, blah. And if I sell some gimmicks, I might pull this down, not what they was offering. Right. And he goes, how many days? And I told him, I said, 65, 72, something like that. I said, thing after that, it's a little bump up. He goes, what would Dad tell you? He goes, what are you making now? I told him, he goes, Bobby, do the fucking math. Go tell him you want it. So I went back and I found Terry and I said, hey, I want it. And he told me, I don't know, someone in the back here, I don't want to mention your name. He said, go give them your, name, social security number and all that stuff, and the office will be in touch with you or whatever, Then at the end of the evening there, he called us into the room and they said, we'd like to welcome, and they hired me, Spagoli, Chris Adams, Kendall Windham, someone else, something like that. But so, yeah. And, as far as, negative experience, a couple of times, I called one time down to go to a nitro, and I was going to start off. I got there and I was supposed to work for like Booker T. Right. And go like 6 or 8 minutes. I'm like, how can I not go out there and have a good match with him, right? Well, then that changed, and Terry Taylor come back, and he said, hey, the car's changed here. And you know how it was, them nitro, they're fucking 5 minutes to 8, and they're not even going, what the hell? So get this shit together, But anyway, it went from me being to Terry just saying something like, Bobby, you're one of the most underused talents we have here. And that really made my, Arn used to give me some great compliments, and I never will forget those kind of compliments either. But that nitro, I was standing there, I was thinking, oh, fuck, I'm getting right here and do a damn squash match for Wrath, whatever. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking at Paul. And what happened, Bischoff and everyone went over on their minutes or whatever. And so, it's live TV and you're trying to do your thing. And then that 8-minute match went to 3, down to basically get a kick in, he's going to squash you, boom, that's it. And I remember Paul looking at me going, Bobby, just go out there and do your job. Don't say no, give him a reason, whatever. And I remember Rocky King saying, did you get your check this week, Bobby? And I said, yeah. He goes, go out there and do your job. I was feeling kind of down about it because, I used to get those, the least over show was probably, I guess, Worldwide or whatever. I'd get wins on there. Terry always booked me in good matches. I'd have good matches with everyone down in Orlando. I really liked that a lot. But here I was going to make, thinking I'm making my debut. Even though I might be putting someone over my debut on Nitro, it went from, to nothing, basically. And believe it or not, it was like right at the top of the hour, boom, took the pin, whatever. And later that evening, I was sitting around, and I just kind of, sulking your beer, going, oh, man, you made your Nitro debut, and you get fucking squashed. And someone, I think I said with Scott and Steve Armstrong, and Scott said, Bobby, do you know how many people saw that match? I go, what do you mean? He goes, it came on right at 9 o'clock. He said, everyone fucking flipped over to Raw. He said, no one probably even saw you during 3 seconds. He goes, it didn't hurt you, believe me. And we sit like at a Fridays after. What? He goes, that fucking match aired like right at 9 o'clock. He said, everyone flipped their fucking channel, you idiot. And I swear to you, I kept thinking people's going to, browbeat me in my hometown or whatever. You're sitting there thinking, oh, yeah, you're going to be on Nitro. Dude, I was at a restaurant about 2 weeks after that, and no one's ever even mentioned that. I have to tell them that story. I was on Nitro because they didn't watch it. I had one kid. This kid come to me about 17 years old, probably wasn't quite 18. He looked at me like, and he's giving me a look, and I go, here it goes. He's gonna come up and start some shit. And this kid, he was, just a kid, but nonetheless, you're a little bit defensive, Sure. And I'm sitting there, and I'm walking up to pay, and he goes, hey man, are you Bobby Blaze? I go, yeah. He goes, I saw you on Nitro the other day. He goes, man, you know how awesome it was to see someone from my hometown on TV? That was awesome. I shook my hand and walked out, and I said, what the fuck? Of all the people that did flip, this kid didn't. And he had something nice to say. Because, you're defensive a little bit sometimes, And I was. But here it was, this kid giving me a big fucking compliment. I'm like, all right, But, yeah, so the negative, man, I made good money, had a good time, met good people. And, hell, we got paid, man. You didn't pay for airline tickets. And, you stayed in pretty decent hotels there and drove nice rental cars. And, it wasn't all fucking rainbows and sunshine and shit, that, and unicorns and lollipops, but fuck, man, you go to Orlando for 10 fucking days and shoot TVs, and you only have to work like 5 of them maybe, and get a pass out there at Universal and fucking hang out like a kid. I could probably sit there and pick it apart if I wanted to, but I ain't got time for that, man. I had a good fucking time. Those Turner checks didn't bounce, as you know.
Yes,
when that fucking check came from FedEx, it came. It was real money, and that's just like Terry. I sit there talking to Terry and Sean later. He goes, "Hey, you're going to put you in some match. You're going to win some. You're going to lose some." He goes, "But here's the thing: your match isn't real. His match isn't real, but this money's fucking real. Do you want it?" And I was like, "Yes, sir, I do." So I signed up for that,
Sure.
But I knew what I was getting into, and I wouldn't change a thing. I'd go back and try to do it. I negotiated there towards the end, and it just didn't work out, as because all the cuts started coming. We all saw it on, the writing was on the wall. But hell, you go back, you do more of it, do it better, and do what's asked of you. It's just like if you go to be a school teacher or a plumber or a salesman, real estate. You get up and you fucking try to do your job the best way you can, and you take pride in it. And that's where I really got the pay me from. Was I got it from a movie. It came out like in 1985 called Runaway Train. I didn't even get it from the business, even though I know other people had said, pin me, pay me, or whatever. It's about 2 convicts escape, and they're on a runaway train, and the one convict just tells the other one, he goes, man, if you could do this, and he starts saying, you look at that floor, you get a little job that a fucking ex-convict can get, and you scrub that toilet, you wipe off that cafeteria tray, but you fucking do it, and that's the way the wrestling business to me is like, you know what, this is my job tonight. My job is to win, or my job is to make Dave Penzer look good, or I'm going to put so-and-so over. You know what, I'm going to do it the best way I can do it, and make it look as good as I can, and take as much pride in what I do as I can. And these people are out there busting their ass every day. They pay $6, $8, $20, or $80 for a pay-per-view, whatever you happen to be on. Because I was on a couple of World War IIIs, and then sure. Of course some bigger shows in Japan where I know them tickets for $30, $60, $80, something like that over there. And I'm thinking, these people bust their ass all day and come to this arena. And I might be out there 10 minutes or 15 minutes or however long I'm going to be out there. By God, they're getting their money's worth. Well, they pay $8 or $80. If my match, they're going to see someone have a good match. Whether I win, lose, or draw, I want that person to say, man, that one match. And Malenko told me this on one of the very first shows I worked on. He said, in the end, it doesn't matter if you win or lose the match. He said, every match, I was wrestling Chris the Dr. Proctor on an outdoor show that Larry used to have over one of those car lots. And he said, before I went there, I knew I was putting Chris over. He told me, blah, blah. Chris had been a former student. And he says, Bobby, I lost 95% of the matches I ever had, but no one remembers that. He goes, here's what you do every match. He goes, whether you win or lose, he goes, and whether it goes 5 minutes or 50 minutes, you do one thing in that match that really stands out, and that'll get you over. And if you get yourself over and get the other guy over, that'll get the match over.
Sure.
And if that's fucking simple, go out there and do your job. I'm going to get you over. I'm going to get me over. I'm going to do one thing. Hopefully it stands out in someone's mind. Said, did you see that guy poke his fucking eyes? Because Larry poked the eyes. We'll just throw it in there. But whatever. And they say, yeah, well, who won the match? I don't know. But did you see that guy? He poked him in the eyes, So you give them that one thing. And they're like, I don't know who won. I don't give a fuck. They had a good time. That's the point, So.
That's exactly 100% right. If You speak with truth. If you give them something to remember, you get the match over and you get yourself over. And I'm sure that was mimicked from Dean because he heard his father say that so many times. Hey, it's funny you mentioned about how you were on the top of the hour at 9 o'clock and they were saying that nobody watched it. To this day, Jimmy Hart is. I can't say to this day. I haven't spoke to him in a few weeks, but Jimmy Hart was convinced that instead of 12 million people watching wrestling on a Monday night, there were like 6 or 7 million people, and they just go from one channel to the other. So because there was on paper, Nielsen had 12 million people watching. But he was convinced that, there was just the same 6, 7 million people, which is still a lot of people back in the day. So in his theory, you would not have only about 150 people would have seen you get killed by wrath. So hey, and just to be clear, if people don't know, I'm 99% sure that the Paul you've been talking about is Paul Orndorff, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, that was Paul.
Just so people wondered.
I'd met him at Smoky Mountain prior to. That's back when WCW, some of the guys, Bobby Eaton, Paul Orndorff, Kevin Sullivan, some of those guys had come up and worked for Jimmy over here at Smoky Mountain, his first start. And so it carried over when I was in WCW. I conducted business with those men. Because of that, they saw me working, house shows for Jimmy and stuff like that. So and then plus they also knew that I, was trained by Professor Boris Malenko. They always mentioned that. That was one of the strongholds I had, man. It was just one of those things. And first time that Kevin Sullivan, I told him is one of these funny things when the first loop I done, Kevin was on the card and he was working every night, that 4-day loop I was telling you about. And they, I don't know, maybe the second night was on a Saturday, maybe. Anyway, it was a battle royal. And I had seen him out there. He's fighting Brian Lee, And so we got the battle royal. And all I kept seeing, I'd only met Kevin at that time down in Florida at the old Sportatorium there. I worked a couple of shows on Tuesday. Right. Pat Tanaka was booking it. Kevin was over there. I can't remember. Jumbo and Rico actually took me over there at the time, back in the day. Well, anyway, so I'd only met Kevin briefly. And, of course, in Smoky Mountain had separate locker rooms and all that. But the second or third night, and I'm seeing him, he's out there every night just, beating up Brian Lee. And I'm like, and then, of course, I've seen him on TV for years. So I'm like, oh, God, he's going to just chop me. I can see it now. As soon as here I am, white meat, baby face, just now coming to territory. We get in that battle royal. Kevin Sullivan's going to come to me. And I kept visualizing him just chopping the living shit out of me, beat me up. And I'll be damned, we go to the ring. We're in some little town up in eastern Kentucky. And as soon as it goes off, Kevin comes straight towards me, locks up light as can be, backs me into a corner saying, I heard Larry Malenko trained you. And I said, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir, he did. He goes, put your hand on top of my head. And I'm sitting there going, what? To myself, what? And I put my hand on top of his head, and he put his hand on top of my, walked to the middle of the ring. There were like 12 guys on there or whatever. And he threw himself over the top rope, turned around, flipped me off and said, screw you, Bobby Blaze, screw you. And walked out there like, hot as can be because he was first one eliminated or whatever. And I was like, oh my God, I just survived it. But see, it was all because Malenko had trained me, man, that, Kevin, and of course, he saw me working too, and Jimmy probably, here's who's going over, whatever. And but yeah, it was that respect level right there. And Kevin had that for Larry, and showed some to me, and showed some mercy on me, and out of that, I think nothing but respect for him. And I tell you, another person who's no longer with us is Chief Wahoo McDaniel, and there was a guy running these fair shows and ballpark shows. Back in the day up here in the Carolinas and Kentucky and stuff. And I was off one night, and you could work on independent shows if it did conflict with your Smoky Mountain schedule. Someone called me and said, hey, I got your book with Wahoo McDaniel up here in West Virginia, like an hour and a half from my house. You want it? I said, hell yeah. Didn't talk to him or anything. Get to the ring. It's the main event, of course. And it's just a small outdoor, county fair thing, couple hundred people standing around. And as soon as we locked up, he goes, I heard Malenko trained you, kid. And, we did the thing. Without even asking, I already knew, you would take a couple of chops and you fucking go down and take the pin after about 8 or 10 minutes. It's a county fair. Boom, boom, boom. Get a little bit of heat, whatever. Chop time, go down. He pins me, goes, if you ever want to get booked, kid, don't tell people that Larry Malenko trained you. They'll think you're going to stretch them. Thank you. thanks, kid. Thanks, boom, boom, boom. I go in the back, you're outside, people leaving here and there, and here he comes across the way. I go meet him. I thank him. He goes, I was kidding about Larry. I said, yeah. I said, yes, sir. He goes, use that name anytime you can to get booked, because he was a great wrestler and a good trainer. And I said, thank you. And he said, no, thank you for the match. And I'm thinking, this is fucking Wally McDaniel, But because of that, Professor Boris Malenko, because of Larry Malenko, the kindness that he took the time to train me to be a man, train me outside of how to conduct myself outside the ring, around the wrestling business. And those things are embedded into your life, Here we are, fucking 30 years later, still speaking about it,
Absolutely.
So,
And by the way, there's no doubt in my mind that if Kevin Sullivan wasn't showing you respect because you were trained by Larry Malenko, he would have chopped the ever-loving crap out of you. Not a doubt in my mind.
We've spoken about it since then, and you know what? I would have fucking taken it, because I understood the grounds that I was where I was at and what I was supposed to be there for, so, but he didn't. He bestowed upon me some respect, out of respect for my trainer, and out of respect probably for Cornette to say, now don't go out here and kill this kid or whatever, but he'd also seen me work 2 or 3 times at that point for those nightly shows, and he knew that Jimmy probably had plans for me. But put your hand on my head, I'm like, and I put it up there, and he held it on there and just jumped over the top rope, spun around, flipped me off, and screw you, Bobby Blaze. I'm like, what? I was like, how? I didn't think at the moment, because someone else probably glomped me from behind or whatever, but I was thinking, how fucking cool is that? I know on the ride home, I kept thinking, man, the Taskmaster, Kevin Sullivan, I was just, because I didn't know there was a battle royal that night. At that time, I had a booking sheet. Like I said, I was filling in for like the first 4 nights or whatever it was, and I just went out there and worked. Like I said, the 4th night's when Brian come to me and said, what's your finish? Well, whatever. But anyway, yeah, some of those guys all goes back to, again, proper training under Malenko, how to conduct yourself as a man, how to conduct yourself around a business,
Great stuff. So glad that we got you on. How do people find your podcast?
Yeah, on my podcast, it's Bell to Bell with Bobby Blaze. It's on iTunes and all the places you fucking steal these podcasts from. I don't know where they give them away at. iTunes and Podcast Addict, and it's Bell to Bell Bobby Blaze on Twitter. You can follow me at Twitter. That's my social media is at Bobby Blaze 744. I built up my Twitter following, as we spoke about earlier. You can find me there. Also, my books are available on Amazon. I have 2 wrestling books, Pin Me, Pay Me, How Boots Will Travel, which we spoke about this evening. And Dave, I cannot thank you enough for having me on to promote that book. Also, I have a second book called I Kicked Out on 2, The Education of a Wrestler. That came out a couple years ago. Have a couple short stories also, but just visit me on Amazon. It's under Bobby Blaze Smedley. Again, you follow me at Bobby Blaze 744 on Twitter, or you just go to my Amazon page. Or if you go and type in Pin Me, Pay Me, more than likely it's going to be one of your first pop-ups. And if you type in Bell to Bell with Bobby Blaze, if you just type in Bell to Bell, it'll probably pop up too, because it's been getting a lot of good, feedback. We're just building it up. It's been up in the air for like 6 weeks now, and that's where you can find me at, man. That's my big main social media. So hit me up there, and I'd love to hear from all the fans once this thing gets on the air. Tell me, hey, I heard you on the podcast, man, because I'll definitely put you over, Dave. You know that, brother. And it's nothing but love and respect, because we have that love and respect for the wrestling business and Malenko and all these people we mentioned. No one tried to bury anyone or make anyone look bad or anything, because there's no need for that. Not in my life, man. We're going to keep it positive and keep it all about love and respect. And it's just an honor that you took the time out of your day to let me know you'd like to have me on your podcast and hear my story. And I appreciate that most sincerely. And I know my P's pop on this microphone, so excuse me. But
I always had that problem.
Thank you.
I always had that problem too. Hey, you need some work on the self-promotion stuff. You need to get no, I'm kidding. You got that? You got that down great. We got the.
Well, I knew you'd cut me off, motherfucker.
No.
You was gonna make a comeback on me.
No. Hey, you reminded me of a lot of fun times and great conversation, and I hope the listeners enjoy it as well. Hey, thanks, Bobby. I appreciate it. Stay in touch.
Yes, sir. My pleasure. Thank you.
want to definitely thank Bobby Blaze for a fun conversation. Like I said, love to talk to people whose story you may not know, and I really hope you enjoyed. Got a lot of people in common: Larry Malenko, Dean Malenko, Brian Hildebrand, Bobby Eaton, just a lot of people. Terry Taylor, Kevin Sullivan, just a lot of people that we're both friends with. And the reminder of the this Jew's taking the money story. People talk about mic drop moments. That might have been my mic drop moment of my life, not my career, of my life, but because I popped the plane, and there was a good amount of wrestling people on that popped it, but a lot of just passengers that had no idea, but and I just got off the plane and walked off, grabbed my carry-on bag, my briefcase, and walked off. Didn't look back. And so funny story. And God, not sure you could say something like that anymore. It's a different world we live in, for better or for worse. But thanks a lot again to Bobby for his stories and his time in the wrestling business. You could tell that this guy still loves the business just as much as the first day he ever watched it. And that's why I like talking to guys, because it comes through how much they love it, how much they appreciate it. And next week should be a lot of fun. Our guest will be Ricky Morton, one half of the Rock and Roll Express, recent members in the WWE Hall of Fame. Looking forward to that conversation. And Ricky is sort of in that vein of Rip Rogers and Bobby Blaze, good old Southern guys who drop a lot of F-bombs and tell it like it is. And that's the way it was back in the 90s and early 2000s in the wrestling business. And which is why I like to, hear these stories and get them all out there for you to enjoy, I hope. Again, hit us up at David Penzer, at Penzer Ringside, and be sure to leave a review if appropriate. And if you haven't already, please download. You get this podcast each and every Monday morning, waiting for you, all wrapped up in a bow. Until next time, this Jew's taking the money. My name is David Penzer. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Follow David Penzer on Twitter at David Penzer. Also, make sure to follow the show on Twitter at Penzer Ringside. You've been sitting ringside with David Penzer on Radio Influence.
This is a Dark to Light with Frank and Bean's Quick Fix on Radio Influence.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.